Good morning. Welcome to this Sunday Practical Buddhism workshop at Vajrayana Institute. I'm Wai Chong. And today's workshop will be exploring the theme of transforming our negative thinking. So, as usual, such workshops, we are doing 2 sessions, one in the morning, these sessions, and then there will be an afternoon session starting at 1 p.m. And since I have switched to YouTube for this kind of workshop, so you're most welcome to post your comments or questions or feedback on the live chat, and I will attend to them. Transforming our negative thinking. So maybe I should start by explaining what am I referring to by this so-called negative thinking. Let me just adjust the camera a little bit. Negative thinking, the way I understand it, is not so much about the contents of those thoughts. Yeah. So of course, people may think that if to think about sad things or to think about suffering, think about things that we have maybe a very negative reaction to, we might call that negative thinking, but not true in this case, right? So in fact, in this workshop, I'm not so concerned about the contents of those thoughts, but maybe the process of thinking itself and the process of all these various different thinking habits that we have. So negative thinking refers to 3 parts. First is the intention behind those thoughts, the motivating factors behind those thoughts, from where they come from. They can come from a place of what in the Buddhist context we refer to as disturbing attitudes or delusions or afflictive emotions. So things like craving, greed, attachment, hatred, anger, aversion, ignorance, closed-mindedness. So if those thinking are motivated by one of these factors, then that gives the whole process an unwholesome quality. And this kind of qualities or motivating factors introduce a certain distortion in the thinking process. So they are not so much about reality. In fact, they distort our perception and understanding of reality. So they are actually perpetuating some kind of misunderstanding, some kind of distortion, or some kind of form of limitation on ourselves, on our understanding. So it starts off wrong, and the process itself, the process of thinking itself, either reinforce that mistake, reinforce those distortion, or aggravate it. Right? So much so that the result that come out on the other end of it is increased suffering. So we look from this sort of a process model, then we can say that such habits of thinking, such way of thinking, such a pattern of thinking, and you can call them habits or pattern because they tend to be recurring, because we all have different habits of thinking and we fall into them very easily, or they're triggered by conditions in our life or what we encounter and so on and so forth. And they have overall negative consequences. They either they increase our unhappiness or suffering, or they block our happiness, they disturb the peace of mind, and they may negatively impact our sense of well-being. So those that's what I refer to as negative thinking. And they tend to happen, how should I say? Of course, we can consciously engage in it, but more likely than not, they are just habits that are triggered by whatever is going on in our life. And they sort of run on autopilot, so to speak. And it has an incredible ability to engage our attention or even to capture our attention. sometimes I say they hijack our attention and keep our attention locked within the thinking process itself. We find that unless we do a lot of mindfulness practice, a lot of meditative practice, we find that we are quite helpless in, first of all, noticing it happening, becoming aware of it, and to somehow retrieve our attention from it, to free our attention from such negative thinking patterns or habits. Yeah. So for most people, we become sort of like a victim, you might say. Our attention is forcefully channeled down this kind of this way of thinking repeatedly, and as a result, we suffer from the consequences of such a form of thinking. Right? So that's what I call negative thinking. Of course, it could be could be related to depression, where thoughts turn very negative. Often involves certain amount of cognitive distortion. Maybe it's over-exaggeration of certain aspect of our life, over-generalization, or sometimes is looking at things in a very narrow way. And so there is always an element of distortion in what I call negative thinking. Other kind of will be thinking that related to anxiety. It sort of increase our anxiety, escalate our anxiety, thinking involving anger, involving craving, or jealousy, and so on and so forth. So the many different variety of it, of course, varies from one person to another. The actual contents will vary greatly, but the underlying mechanism will be more or less similar for us human beings. Yeah. Contrasting this with what I would call positive thinking. Positive thinking is not about thinking only of positive things, thinking of only good things. Positive thinking can be thinking about suffering, can be thinking about problems, can be investigating suffering and problems, can be looking at mistakes or failures, can be looking at our own mistakes and investigate where has we gone wrong, what have we done wrong, what are the consequences of our own mistakes, our errors. So that can also be positive thinking. So the contents are not so, not the defining characteristics. Rather, positive thinking can be viewed as derived from wholesome intention, one based on loving kindness, compassion, wisdom, renunciation. So this some of this in Buddhism we talk about this as wholesome mental factors or wholesome intentions, and the process itself reinforce these wholesome qualities, enhance them, strengthen them, reinforce them, and the consequence on the other end of such way of thinking are often beneficial. Not all the time, so we need to be discerning, but tends to be beneficial. It gives rise to helpful, wholesome actions or behavior, which brings happiness as a result, bring peace of mind, bring greater or deeper understanding of our situation, of reality, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that is how I differentiate between positive thinking and negative thinking. Yeah. And I like to do that because I'm a pessimist. So most of the contents of my thoughts are what people will consider to be pretty pessimistic. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that I'm not engaging in positive thinking, isn't it? So even though I might be thinking about death, but that could be something good can come out of it, isn't it? So it's good not to define the nature of thinking solely based on the contents it is engaged in. But we also need to broaden it and look at the underlying or motivating intention. What goes on in the process of thinking? Is there distortion, or is there a greater understanding of the reality of the situation? Are we seeing things clearer, or are we not seeing things clearer? In fact, we're going opposite. we become entrenched in our biases or prejudice and so on and so forth. And finally, the effect that come out of the other end. How does it affect our behavior, our actions, speech, and what sort of consequence they bring? Happiness or unhappiness, greater peace of mind, or a disturbed body and mind. So transforming our negative thinking, I thought to look at a few different meditations which embodied different kind of approaches to working creatively with such habits of us. First, we have to discover what are our unique blend of habits. And it varies from one person to another. So we need to, first of all, really come to become aware and conscious of what sort of thinking do I does my attention get involved with or get sort of caught up in my day-to-day life. Then and only then can we do something about it. Without that fundamental awareness, or you can call, say, mindfulness, we may know that we are unhappy, or we may know that we are increasingly unhappy, increasingly anxious, or fearful, or whatever. But we may not be so aware of the process. How do we get there? Once we become aware of the process, then we can start to do something. We can do something to change the process. We may not be able to, at least in this workshop, we not be able to absolutely stop it from happening, stop our negative thinking habits from being activated, but we can definitely go a long way to diminish its negative impact. Really, almost like greatly decrease its range of influence and of course its depth or the intensity of its influence. And we try to make it less and less harmful until it becomes almost harmless. Not entirely, but almost harmless. So it's sort of like the fangs of a poisonous snake, so that it loses its bite, so to speak. So that is my objective for this workshop. And let's start with the first meditation and the first idea I want to present, and that is to cultivate the mindfulness of our thinking habits, to become more and more aware of what sort of thoughts am I entertaining, what sort of thoughts am I attending to, am I feeding with the energy of my attention. So first we must see for ourselves, where are all the time and energy of my attention spent on, what kind of thinking it is. And also within this, to recognize a very important fact about thoughts. Thoughts can be about reality or can be about unreality, because a lot of our thoughts are actually fantasies, based on imaginations, based on speculations, and based on memories, but not all memories are accurate. So thoughts are about all these various things, but thoughts are not those things. So first and foremost, to understand, if I'm thinking of going on a holiday, I'm not actually on holiday. Right? So there is a differentiation between the thoughts and the reality. There's nothing wrong about it, but that's how our thoughts function. And there's also the power of our thoughts. Something that has not happened yet, and yet we can consider it. Something that has long passed, and yet we can bring it back to mind, to examine it, to relive it. And something that is totally impossible, we can consider it in our thinking, consider the possibility of it. So this really is part of the power of our thinking. But precisely because of this ability, we also have a tendency to confuse thoughts with reality. So thoughts are, of course, part of reality, but what we are thinking about may not be reality. So we must make that differentiation. And this is actually the ability of thinking that is most misleading. I could be here Sunday, not at work, pretty relaxed, nothing. There's nobody here in this empty meditation hall, and yet, if I'm not mindful, my thoughts can go to a stressful situation, at work, at home, or wherever. And as I replay that scenario, I get all stressed out again, almost as if I'm revisiting or reliving that experience. This is a little bit of the power of thought, but also it's kind of a deception of thoughts. So I am confusing, what I'm thinking about with reality, and I actually find my body, my emotions react to that thought about scenario as if it is real. So this is one aspect of thought that we really need to give more attention to and learn to differentiate between our thought-based thought-based scenario versus the reality of this moment. Yeah. Once you're able to do that, it really we can still be thinking, but nonetheless, it deprives those thinking habits of a lot of their power to manipulate or to control our emotional reactions. Because we can make a differentiation between I can think about a stressful situation, to look for a solution, versus I'm thinking of a stressful situation and I allow myself to become all stressed out all over again. Yeah, so, and we can explore this aspect of thought or thinking, and by a very simple meditation technique, in which I'm going to invite you to contrast two different sets of experiencing. One is, I call it sensing. Sensing means functioning primarily through our physical senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensing through your body, the bodily sensation. I call this category sensing. Another activity that our mind engages in will be thinking. Right. Thinking can be thinking about what's going on here, what's going on in the past, in the future, in some altered reality or universe or whatever it is. Yeah. But so I want you to contrast these two mental activities and become aware of them. Become aware of sensing when we are sensing, when we're hearing a sound outside, then there is hearing, listening. Or we notice certain tension in the body, then we are sensing that bodily sensations. Yeah. Versus, then there are other moments where our attention is drawn into our thoughts and we are thinking. We can be thinking about something of the past. We are revisiting some memories. We could be fantasizing, daydreaming. I'm very good at that. Or we could be passing judgment on ourselves. Oh, you are wrong. This meditation is terrible. You're all distracted. It's no good. No. So that's another aspect of another type of thinking also. So thinking and sensing. And here in this meditation, I'm just very simple. Invite you to make the sensing part the main support. So repeatedly inviting our attention, the energy of our attention, channel it back into sensing. And you can through any of the senses, but usually in meditation, especially when you close your eyes, the two main senses will be hearing, listening, and sensing through the body, the different bodily sensations, tension, relaxation, heaviness, lightness, also feelings. There are feelings involved, feeling comfortable, feeling uncomfortable, and so forth. Versus the activity, which inevitably you will notice your mind engaging, will be thinking, past, future, some ongoing inner dialogue, and so on and so forth. And we just label them accordingly. We notice that our attention is with the sounds, sensing. We notice our attention is aware of the touch of the breath or the different breath sensation in the body, sensing. And then maybe a little bit later, we notice we are no longer sensing. Our attention is drawn into certain thinking. Then we Very gently, we label that thinking. And then having labeled it, it helps us to see that our attention is involved in thoughts. That's the important thing. The labeling is secondary. The labeling is just to highlight to us, make us become aware, help us to see clearly, the process that is happening in this moment that my attention is engaged with is thinking. Right? And by making you label it, you sort of emphasize that you must really notice this is what is happening. And having done that, then that's as a part of the exercise. In other time there's no need. You can continue thinking if that's what you want to do. But in this exercise, this meditation, I invite you to learn to drop that thought, drop that train of thought, and come back to sensing. Come back to this moment here and now. Come back to sensing, and most importantly, is to see whether you can perceive a difference between these two activities. What happens when the mind is involved in thinking? And what happens when the mind or attention is involved with sensing? Can you tell them apart? All right. So that is the first meditation we're going to do. Okay, so let's just jump right in and invite you to wherever you are to find a suitable, comfortable meditation posture. Feel free to sit on a chair like what I'm doing. You can sit on the floor on the cushion in the cross-leg posture. Also, you can lie on your back, especially in the privacy of your own home. Lie on the floor on the yoga mat, or lie on a couch or a firm bed or wherever it is. And make yourself comfortable in that posture. The most important thing is to make sure that the spine is upright in a natural way if you are sitting, and the spine is straight if you are lying down. And arrange our hands and arms in such a way that they are supported during the meditation, that trying to dangling your hands here and there. You don't have to contract the muscles of your shoulders to hold them up. For the eyes, feel free to close them completely if you are familiar with that. Or you can also leave your eyes open or half open, depending on what works best for you. So take a few moments and settle your body into meditation. So I usually start by inviting you to notice, to become aware of the sensations beneath the body, the sensations coming through from the points of contact between the body and the seat, the body and the ground. At those points of contact, maybe we become aware of sensations that feel solid, firm, and stable. Qualities of the support that is very reassuring to ourselves, to our own body. They send a message that our body in this posture is well supported, well balanced, and safe. And once that message is able to get through, so to speak, to our own body, you'll find that it facilitates a process of loosening up of the body, almost as if the body realizes that it does not have to be so tight and tense and so contracted, that it actually can unwind a bit, loosen up a bit. It can start to let go of some of those unnecessary contractions and tightenings. And then gradually at its own time, it can settle down comfortably into this meditation posture. And then next, as a way to help body and mind transition into the meditation, I'm going to invite you to return your attention to sensing. And first and foremost, sensing our own body, getting in touch with the sensations at the different parts of the body has a very grounding effect on our system. So let's start at the crown, and in no particular way, feel free during the meditation to ignore what I'm saying if it's not relevant to you or not helpful. And see if you can notice sensations at the crown of our head. There's no need to put in extra effort, just a very light touch of your attention. Maybe you notice some tingling sensations at the crown, or a feeling of warmth, or maybe coolness, or slight sense of pressure pressing down, or maybe nothing at all. Having attend to the crown, imagine attention flow downwards like water, becoming aware of the sensations in the rest of the head. Maybe as we move forward and downward, we become aware of sensations at our own face, sensations at the forehead, sensations at the rest of the face. And see if you can highlight any tensions you notice here at the face. Are you tensing up the muscles of your forehead, or muscles around the eyes, or muscles of your jaw? And is it possible, since we have more conscious control over our facial muscles, to see if we can relax some of those tensions in the face? Allow the whole face to soften so that it can feel more at ease, more comfortable. Lightly touching and be aware of sensations at the sides of the head, at the back of the head, and maybe even inside the head. Without pushing, without straining, just a light touch with very little effort. See if we can reconnect with sensing. Moving downwards into the neck and the throat. Notice sensations here. And likewise continue into the shoulders, sensing the different sensations at the shoulders. How are your shoulders feeling today? If we do encounter along the way any uncomfortable feelings, area of tightness and tension that are not so easy for us to consciously relax, see if we can simply acknowledge them as such. Just acknowledge those areas of tightness and tension or even discomfort, and let them be for the moment. With our attention continue down, both arms at the same time, sensing, getting in touch with the sensations at the upper arms, subtle sensations at the elbows. Continue on at our own pace, into the forearms, into the hands, as well as the fingers. So very plain, simple sensations are what we are sensing, or we are returning our attention to in this moment. Nothing dramatic or spectacular, but just reconnecting our attention with the body helps to reconnect the mind with the body. Let's return our attention to the chest. Throughout this part of the meditation, we may find that we have to keep inviting our attention to come back here and now to sensing. Sense the sensations at the chest, the movements of the chest related to breathing, any other sensations here. Notice sensations at the front of the body as well as at the back of the shoulders, the upper back. And then allow attention to travel downwards so that we are aware of the abdomen, sensations here, at the level of the skin, at the level of the muscles, and deep within at the level of the organs, if possible. Notice sensations at the front, but also sensations at the back, at the middle and lower back. And continue into the pelvis so that we are aware of sensations here at the pelvic region where powerful muscles are attached. Feel the weight of the pelvis resting on our seat or the floor. And see if we can give permission and allow it to rest here comfortably. We send our attention down both legs so that we are aware of sensations starting from the hips, down to the knees, further down into the ankles, and eventually at both feet, so that we are aware of sensations coming through from the soles of the feet, the top of the feet, sensation in the toes. So having sense into our own body, this really helps the body as well as the mind to shift gears, to put aside things that preoccupy them earlier on and come fully into our meditation. So building on this, in this actual meditation, see if we can make sensing the main support for our attention. Sensing include hearing, listening to the sounds in the surrounding, the sound of my voice coming through your speakers. Sensing also include noticing the sensations in the body, different kinds of sensations, tensing, tension, relaxing. Heaviness, lightness, tightness, looseness, as well as feelings, feeling comfortable, feeling uncomfortable. Of course, sensing also includes seeing, if you have your eyes open, smelling, if there are scents around you, and quite unlikely also it does include tasting, if you have something in your mouth. Make sensing the main activity for your attention in this meditation. Invite your attention to come back to sensing the here and now repeatedly throughout the meditation. And along the way, during the rest of the meditation, or even previously, you will have noticed that sensing is often interrupted by thinking. Or at best, you may find both activities seem to be happening simultaneously, sensing and thinking. It's See if you can become aware when the attention is involved in thinking. Very gently apply the label thinking to help you see clearly, to be fully mindful of what is happening to your attention when it is involved in thoughts about past, future, thoughts that sound like an inner dialogue or inner commentary, thoughts of judgments. To see if we can, for all these thoughts, when we become aware, see if we can simply label them as thinking. And when you can, invite your attention to put aside the thinking and come back here and now to sensing. Coming back to this moment, when we do notice, however long or short, that our attention is involved in thinking, simply label that thinking. We are getting upset or frustrated. See if we can view this as a normal process of our attention repeatedly being involved with thinking. And then invite it to come back here and now, to be in touch, to be sensing the reality of this moment. Coming back to this moment, coming back to sensing, as you give your attention to your physical senses, you start to notice more and more of what is happening here and now in your present moment reality. You notice sounds that you are unaware of. You notice bodily sensations. You become more in touch with your reality of this moment. So coming back to sensing, coming back to this moment, along the way, when you become aware, the attention is lost in thought, so to speak. When you become aware, when you notice it, see if we can gently label that as thinking, to help you identify, to help you really notice what is happening And then invite your attention gently, gracefully to come back to this moment, to come back to the support of sensing. Coming back to here and now, coming back to sensing, stepping out of the world, the universe of our thinking mind. See if we can notice the difference, a very real perceptual difference between sensing and thinking, and become sensitized to it, become more mindful of it, so that we become better at being aware of our thinking, being aware of when our attention is lost in thoughts. Coming back here now, as you come back to sensing and contrast sensing with thinking, hopefully you may come to notice how deceiving our thoughts can be, how the world created by our thinking can feel so real. And yet, when we come back to here and now, come back to sensing, we realize that all of that are just the creation of our own thoughts. So see if you can becoming good at differentiating between sensing the present moment reality and our thinking about reality. Okay, welcome back to your reality. So this is a very simple exercise of meditation on mindfulness, contrasting our attention preoccupied with sensing versus attention involved with thinking. Hopefully you can tell that from your own experience how powerful our thoughts are. And that when attention is involved in our thoughts, it's so-called taken on the ride on this train of thoughts. Our thoughts can actually create a reality of its own, a world of its own, and our attention is preoccupied with it, it's so caught up in it. And the thoughts can shape the way we see things and the way we relate to things and respond to things. And that's the power of human thinking. And, in of itself is something very valuable. It's an ability that we make good use of, which has helped our survival and also greatly improve the quality of our life. But it can also be misused, unintentionally, but nonetheless, we get lost in our thoughts or thought-created worlds. Not all which are helpful or beneficial. So the first thing is to be able to see a thought as a thought, to deprive it of its primary power to, in a way, control our attention. So thoughts in of itself are not necessarily dangerous or frightening. If we can see it for what it is, oh, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking about the past. I'm thinking about the future. So that is the first thing we can do to transform our negative thinking, is to be able to, instead of believing in the reality created by our thoughts, to return it to what it is, to see a thought as a thought. Yeah. And over and above that, there is something else we can do. Quite often when people touch on this topic of transforming negative thinking, we are engaged with, we want to engage the content of those thinking. It's almost like we want to have an argument with our negative thinking. No, life is not like that. Reality is like this. No, we try to almost try to have a dialogue, try to be convincing of our own thoughts and habits to think differently. Personally, for me, that doesn't work very well. My habits are quite persistent. And it seems like my conscious thinking is not as convincing as my subconscious, my rumination, or my auto-piloted rumination has a far more enchanting ability to shape the world, even though it can be a suffering world, but nonetheless, my attention just buy into it. Yeah. So I think another way to work on that is not to work on the conscious level. Buddhism is a very sort of simplified way of describing the functioning of our mind, of our consciousness. There's only two levels. There isn't a kind of unconscious in Buddhism. There is no such thing as a non-conscious processing. I mean, no words for it. So we either talk about our conscious experience, the manifest conscious experience, which is thinking, sensing, as well as all the different emotional reactions. Then the next level down in Buddhism, we use the term metaphorically, we call it seeds. So underground, under the so-called conscious ground, is all these seeds. And there are seeds of wholesomeness, like seeds of loving kindness, seeds of compassion, seeds of wisdom. Then there are also seeds of unwholesomeness, seeds of anger, of hatred, of jealousy, of craving. So it's like a seed storage, right? It's full of seeds. And depending on the external conditions or whatever it is, then the seeds germinate and so-called germinate and grow and manifest, different kind of experiences on the conscious level. Like, for example, the different kind of thoughts that pop into our mind, that preoccupy our attention. So something I call it like popcorn popping, like just different kind of seeds just repeatedly, uncontrollably sometimes just keep coming forth, especially when we are meditating. Despite our best effort to come back to the present, come back to sensing, it seems like there's just all these different seeds popping, depending on our habits, of course. Then you might find that your attention is inevitably caught up in these different scenarios, different kind of thinking. Yeah. So we can work on the seed level. So what we can do is take care to plant more wholesome seeds, right? So that there's a higher chance, if there are more wholesome seeds than unwholesome seeds, then the higher chance for the wholesome ones to ripen, right? Not only that, but to nurture those seeds, nurture those wholesome seeds, give them the best possible conditions, so that not only more often will they ripen, but they will grow strong and they will come forth, manifest in a strong, powerful way. So taking care at the seed level of our experience is another way we can diminish and weaken our harmful or at least unhelpful thinking habits. So much so that if we are able to strengthen our wholesome qualities, the seeds at the seed level, you'll find that it's almost like the field of our mind and consciousness is constantly flourish, it's grown full of all this wholesome qualities. So much so that even if we do have unwholesome seeds, they are much weaker. They find it harder to manifest, and even if they do manifest, they are less convincing, less powerful, less able to hijack our attention and hold our attention within them. So that is another way to work with transforming our negative thinking. We don't need to directly debate with our negative thoughts. We don't need to directly try to convince our mind on the conscious level to think differently. We just work on the so-called subconscious or unconscious level, at the level of the seeds. Just take care to nurture the wholesome seeds, to plant more wholesome seeds. So it sort of had a positive feedback, reinforce them. Yeah. And just by doing that, you find that you are depriving our unwholesome habits, unwholesome, unhelpful thinking habits of our source of nutrients, of source nutrients. And so there is a kind of metaphor of feeding versus starving. We feed the wholesome qualities, wholesome habits, and we starve our unwholesome thinking habits. And over a period of time, we can actually see a difference in how the kind of thought that manifests in our mind, the kind of responses coming forth from within ourselves, within our consciousness to the different happenings in our life. Okay, and in the Buddha's teaching, there are three what we call right intentions that are highlighted. Right intention means wholesome intention, loving kindness, compassion, and renunciation. So we can make that the focus and nurture the seeds for these wholesome intentions so that they get stronger, there are more of them, they come forth more readily, and also our thoughts become preoccupied with them. So then instead of thinking, having negative thoughts, we have thoughts that are related, that come from kindness, that come from compassion, that come from renunciation. So that is another way we can transform our negative thinking by building up the number and the strength of the seeds of wholesomeness. So let's take the example of loving kindness. How do we go about strengthening the seeds of loving kindness and maximizing the chances of them manifesting into loving thoughts? We can do that by taking care to give it the right kind of nutrients, the right kind of conditions. Then you will find that more likely than not, we would be nurturing and then responding with loving kindness. So one main condition for us to express or manifest kindness or to think in a kind way is to be able to relate. This is true for others, relate to others. We find them somehow not as aliens, as some kind of outsiders, the opposite camp, but we somehow be able to bring them into, to be side by side with us, into the same camp, so to speak, in the sense that we find that, I can relate to them. I'm related to them by blood, related to them by common interests, common objective, aim, some kind of commonality, so that they no longer seems foreign, alien, of the opposite camp, but instead they are a part of us, so to speak. We have found some that we share in certain things, share in certain commonality, that bring us closer together. Right? So this is a very important condition for us to be able to experience or express kindness and compassion to others, but also to ourselves, our own selves, the different aspects of ourselves. Like, for example, we talk about all these habits. Those habits, good or bad, are also part of us. And instead of taking an antagonistic attitude towards our own anger, our depression, our anxiety, we can also maybe relate to them, find a way to relate to them in a way to not see them as some kind of monsters dwelling within us, something alien and frightening and terrifying, but in fact see them as also a part of us. And what is the commonality between parts of us and ourselves, between others and ourselves? One very powerful idea, at least for me, is to think that each and every one of us is born with this instinctive desire to be happy and to not suffer. It's almost like a driving force, for each one of us. And that is also true with all these different habits and different reactions we have. They are all in service of that same idea we have, the same wish or heartfelt wish and desire. We're trying to be happy, trying to find happiness, trying to avoid suffering, trying to not suffer. And I personally find this condition, just this one simple point, very powerful, because then I can find that I might not agree with this person, I might not even like this person, I actually quite dislike the person, but I cannot deny this fundamental fact that I know that this person is just like me. We share in this commonality that all human beings share in this. Whatever we are trying to do, whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it, we know that this person is really trying to be happy and to not suffer. And we might strongly disagree with their definition of happiness. We may strongly disagree with the methods they have adopted. But we can't disagree that what they are trying to do is actually quite similar to what I'm trying to do. Maybe the same. They are really trying to fulfill their definition of happiness, to find their version of happiness, and to avoid suffering. And I'm also doing the same thing. We might define the happiness differently, but nonetheless, the wish is the same. And likewise, with all these different aspects of myself, my anger is also arise in an attempt to protect me from what I perceive as harmful, what I perceive as suffering, and likewise in an attempt to help me find happiness that I long for. And likewise it's true with my depression. It sounds strange, with my depressing thoughts, with my anxious thoughts. They're all different attempts at controlling life, trying to manipulate, maneuver to avoid suffering and to find happiness. Maybe they are sort of ill-advised, they are all distorted and therefore ineffective in bringing about the desired aims, but nonetheless they represent a part of that wish and that attempt to be happy and to not suffer. And if I can think in this way, I can relate to them. I don't agree with them, but I can relate to them. And I can find a measure of friendliness, loving kindness towards these different aspects of myself and also towards others. Okay, so this meditation we're going to do before a lunch break, I invite you to spend a little bit of time as we bring to mind different people in our life, one at a time, to consider this person in the light of this condition that I just mentioned, that this person is just like me. I can relate to this person because all of us want to be happy, trying our best to be happy. And we don't like suffering. We're trying our best to avoid suffering. And we can, in seeing in this way, we can see how maybe we define happiness differently. So therefore we go about getting it differently. Or maybe we view suffering differently. And so our attempts to avoid suffering can look very different. Maybe I tend to withdraw, to avoid contact. Maybe they decided to take a more aggressive approach, and so it looks very different on the surface. But deep down, we can trace it back to a very similar source. Each one of us simply wanting to be happy and not suffer. And on that basis, then we try to cultivate loving kindness. From this so-called understanding, is it possible for us to open our heart and sincerely wish this person, may you live in safety, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you live with ease. And the last part of the meditation, I'm going to invite you to come back to oneself and think of all these negative thoughts or habits that we have, some of which are very create lots of suffering for us. Like for example, if we have a lot of issue with anxiety, it's very unpleasant. A panic attack is kind of pretty awful experience. Yeah. And so all these different reactions coming from within ourselves, and which are increasing our suffering. But can I relate to them from the same point of view, that they are just my attempts, my mind, my body, repeated attempts to find happiness and to avoid suffering? Maybe it'll, not in such a good way, maybe completely distorted, but seen from that point of view, is it possible to extend loving kindness and embrace it, and sincerely from the bottom of our own heart wish ourselves, in spite of all this, may I live in safety, may I be happy, may I be healthy, and may I live with a sense of ease in my life. All right, so let's give that a try and see what happens. See whether we can nurture some wholesome seeds within ourselves. So once again, let's settle our body back into a comfortable meditation posture. See if we can regard the posture itself also as an expression of loving kindness towards ourselves, by choosing a posture that suits us, that is able to support our body and therefore the mind in meditation. Take care that the back feels comfortable in this posture, that we have not introduced additional unnecessary pain or tension into the length of our spine, especially the neck and the lower back. Rest our hands and arms on some physical supports so that we can help the shoulders to stay relaxed. Feel free to either close the eyes completely or leave them open, whichever works for you. And just as before, take a few moments and allow the body to find its way into the posture. Allow the body to come to feel that this posture is very stable, solid, very supportive. And reassured in this way, our body can begin this automatic process of loosening up, progressively letting go of some of those unnecessary tightness, contractions, so that given time, the body can really settle down comfortably into the posture. And then to facilitate the transition of body and mind into meditation, for me, I think the best way is to enhance that connection between body and mind, or re-establish that connection between body and mind if we are lately have been feeling a bit disconnected. So for the next few minutes, I invite you to turn your attention to become aware of the different sensations in the body. You can do so in your own way. I'm not going to guide you to this. Just become aware of areas of the body that might feel a bit tight and tense, with uncomfortable feelings. Is it possible for you to acknowledge them as you become aware of them? Especially with our face, since we do have more conscious control over the facial muscles. If we do notice tensions in the face, especially if we are tightening up the muscles of our forehead, or we are clenching our jaw, or for no reason at all, we are tightening the muscles around the eyes, see if we can release some of those tensions. At least keep our face feeling quite soft, quite at ease, comfortable and relaxed. Coming back to sensing our own body, noticing the different sensations. We can also highlight if we find certain part of the body that feels relaxed, soft, at ease, with comfortable feelings. We can also highlight that to ourselves. So resting our body in the posture, allow it to continue to unwind, to loosen up, to release unnecessary tension in its own time. We are facilitating our body and mind in shifting gears and slowly settling into the meditation. Now I invite you to begin the loving kindness meditation, but to start by considering this commonality we share with others in our life. Bring to mind someone close to you, one at a time. As you picture this person in your mind's eye, I invite you to spend just a few moments at the beginning, just to reflect on this fact that I mentioned, that this person is just like me. Each one of us is trying our best to find happiness, to be happy, and we are also trying our best to avoid suffering, to not suffer. Think a little bit, reflect on whether that's true or not for yourself and for this person. And how do you see, what are the evidence you can see in this person's life, in his or her behavior, reactions, and so forth? How they are just like us, trying to be happy and trying to not suffer. And as you follow that thought, the train of thought, reflecting, investigating, I hope you can find that this helps to make that person more relatable. That we can relate to this person. We can almost understand from their point of view why they choose to make such choices, they behave in this way or that way. And when we feel ready, see if we can, in the light of this reflection, find within our own heart that loving intention, the seeds of loving intention that we can call forth and that we are going to reinforce and nourish and nurture and express it in the form of a few simple phrases that best convey our understanding of loving kindness. May you live in safety. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And slowly and mindfully, simply repeat the words, the phrases, and offer loving kindness to this person. And feel free to alternate between reflection and offering loving kindness at your own pace and in your own way. May you live in safety. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Coming back to the person you're focusing on, not to worry if you get distracted, which is quite normal. Simply invite your attention to come back here and now. Refocus on this person. Maybe even say their name, almost as if you are calling out to catch their attention. And see if you can reflect and remind yourself of how similar you are to this person, at least on a deeper level. Both of us are trying our best to be happy and to not suffer. And see if we can then sincerely express our loving kindness for this person in words. May you live in safety. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. So feel free to stay as long as you like with each person. And then when you feel ready, you can move on. Bring another person to mind. Repeat the same process, reflecting, recognizing how this person is just like me, really trying to be happy and to not suffer. And see if we can find within ourselves the sincere wish, the wish that may you, therefore, find the happiness you so long for, and that you will be free from the suffering. May you live in safety. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. Refocusing on the person that you're meditating on, see if in the light of this idea that each one of us has this innate instinctive wish and desire to be happy and to not suffer, see whether they help you to understand them a little bit more, to be able to relate to their choices, their behavior from their point of view as opposed to from ours, how they are in their own way trying to find happiness, and how in their various attempts trying to avoid suffering. May you live in safety. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. And feel free to continue radiating loving kindness, nurturing the seeds of loving kindness for the other people in your life, if you so wish. Otherwise, I would also invite you towards the end of this meditation to turn your attention back to oneself, to also remind ourselves that we, like everybody else, is trying our best to be happy and to not suffer, and to see all our so-called negative thinking habits, all of our fearful thinking, fearful thoughts, worrying thoughts, anxious thoughts, depressing thoughts, angry thoughts, all those habits are our attempt to find happiness or to avoid suffering. Misguided maybe, distorted maybe, or twisted and turned, and quite often self-defeating, increasing suffering instead of reducing it, destroying our happiness instead of securing it. But nonetheless, they're all part of our own attempt to fulfill the heartfelt wish to be happy. So can we embrace all of them within loving kindness and sincerely wish ourselves, may I live in safety, may I be happy, may I be healthy, may I live with ease. And then we conclude the practice by dedicating. We dedicate by gathering up all the positive momentum we created this morning through meditation, through reflection, through paying attention. Think of this as we are nurturing new seeds, planting new seeds, nurturing them, wholesome seeds, we're just planting a different batch of seeds. We might have made some mistake in the past. We nurtured the wrong kind of seeds, but that's all right. Now we dedicate this positive momentum that we have now created towards the fulfillment of our wishes and aspirations for ourselves and also for others. We dedicate that may anything good and wholesome that come out of our practice, may they stay with us, may they linger in our body and mind, in our unconscious, linger as seeds, as potentials, so that they can continue to benefit us in the future. Okay, so that is a simple loving kindness meditation, focusing on the condition of seeing relatedness, to emphasize relatedness. And the one factor I mentioned is to see ourselves and others as we share in this same wish, heartfelt wish to, almost like a kind of instinct, to want to be happy and to not suffer. Of course, we define happiness and suffering very differently, and we make different choices. We go about doing it very differently, but we are all equal in that sense. And that can be a basis for us to feel not so unrelated or separate from that we can relate to them. We may not like them, okay, there's a different thing, but we can relate to them. And therefore, we can, to some small measures, extend loving kindness, just sincerely wishing that they will be able to find happiness and to not suffer. And also to extend that also to our own habits of thinking, the negative, distorted habits of thinking, which has caused us quite a bit of problems and suffering. But nonetheless, if we see them as our former attempt at happiness, or for our previous attempts at trying to not suffer, now that we know better, now that we are more aware, we can become less invested in them. We can learn to not rely on them so much. So we withdraw our support, our investment in this kind of habits of thinking that turn out not to be not so successful, not so effective, and invest that energy of attention to plant more seeds of wholesomeness and to nourish them, to nurture them, so that they can grow, flourish, and to bear fruit of happiness for us, and also in turn lay down more seeds of wholesomeness. So we try to encourage this and to discourage that. Yeah. And so this is one way we can, and yet another way we can work on our negative thinking habits to weaken them and to strengthen more wholesome, more positive thinking habits. Right? So that's what I have to offer this morning. And in the afternoon session, we will dig a bit deeper to see what other ways we can apply and work with negative thinking to transform them. Right. Thank you very much for your attention, and we are going to have 1 hour break and come back. I'll be back at 1 o'clock. So if you come back, I look forward to you. If not, you're going off to do other things. I wish you have a good Sunday, and see you around. Thank you.